Hi, and welcome to this week's weekly RV report for the week, the final week of Friday, May 30th, 2025. Wow, has this month gone quickly, and time does not seem to be slowing down for anyone, and neither do the updates. So if you are new to the channel, please thank you for joining us, and please do like, subscribe, and share as it helps the channel grow and others to gain in the knowledge you're being afforded. As you know, we had a busy month of podcasts for May. We're taking a little bit of a hiatus till June 9th, where we'll resume and we'll have some fantastic podcasts. I would even humbly say some of our best to date, but you can be the judge of that. As you know, as a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor, nor is this constituted as financial advice, just merely high quality information for you to use for your own personal discernment. That being said, let's turn our attention to the nation of Iraq, as the majority of today's or this week's report will be centered around Iraq. There's been a lot of activity to discuss, and it is as follows. On Tuesday, the 27th, Iraq paid its salaries to various governmental employees, something they did not do back in April. So we need to ask ourselves a critical question. How and why was this able to be achieved this time? Well, let's look at some facts. We have a private sector in America. So do they. They call it the Ministry of Planning. We have a stock market in the Dow. They have the Forex for the dinar public rate, a false rate, by the way, as we've talked about, a programmed fake rate. We have governmental employees. So too do they. The countries copy each other, as you know, is my point. So isn't it plausible and even likely that their private sector, our private placements, AKA, got paid internally already, and they're just treating it as a surplus, as a narrative for the citizens to accept and understand. Then when it's timed for the perfect moment, they will release the new rate in country to their citizens first, along with their oil annuity credits. This is what was foretold would be the case when this was about to happen. So now I could tell you about this, but as always, we like to give you visual matrices, things you can look at as, positive touch points to see the activity that's been transpiring. So let's take a look at a few articles that we can see it's happening right in front of us. We'll start with this one with a very well-known foe in this movement, Nir al-Maliki, who is an Obama holdover. But what's significant about this is that the military this week ordered to stand down to withdraw 200 members of special forces that were protecting him. That's pretty important because they were only protecting him before when they had money to do so and they were funding corruption. This is a significant move in a demarcation. As you can see, this was dated yesterday, right there, as my cursor is showing. That's an important thing. When they start defunding internally, and they are working within the trenches of the infrastructure to build it up, that sets the stage for the financial infrastructure externally to change. And this is a big movement, more than you might know. Okay, the next slide here. Western Union and MoneyGram, according to Majid, the transfers are being stopped, going in and out of country of Iraq. Hugely significant. That to us signals that what would be next in sometime in the near future would be the currency auction stopping, the sale of currencies. Okay, then we move to the next slide. Sanction that was imposed on Iraq yesterday is against the current government, the corrupt government, the Iranian government we've always waxed poetic about. Once they bomb the militia, current government will fall apart immediately. Well, we go back to the previous slide here with Maliki. He's part of the previous government holdover. So you're seeing an ending of the old regime and a beginning of the new one. Hugely important for what we are looking for. Now let's turn our attention to a couple of other things. Vietnam, not a whole lot to talk about per se, but there are some significant touch points we'd like to share. Vietnam's banking shifts signals financial reset. This is according to Francis Haldekoon, if I'm saying that correctly. Vietnam's banks now possess over 95% of transactions digitally, with 87% of adults banking the country is fast becoming a digital financial hub. Less reliance on cash and oil, more focus on tech and services. You're seeing that systemic throughout the world. Currency stability. Currently, their dong is 25,890 to the dollar, holding steady amid the rising digital confidence. So as the digital system comes up and the old system comes down, the financial shift and the RI, in the case of Iraq and Vietnam, takes center stage. Investor signals, new banking, sandbox, biometric onboarding, fintech runway. From AI integration and QR payments across borders, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand, Vietnam isn't just catching up, it's actually leading, much like Iraq is leading the Middle East. Geopolitically, this plays right into a digital sovereignty. While others react to inflation and de-dollarization, Vietnam builds infrastructure. It's not just a blueprint, it's not a pivot, but rather a blueprint for resilience. Now, I want to make this point really crystal clear to our existing followers and the new ones, because we get this comment from time to time. We're not saying we're fans of the mark of the beast system or the new digital economic system. That's not what we're saying. What we've been saying is that Christians specifically will have, we believe, about a 5-year window to take advantage of all the wealth transfer mechanisms, the currencies, the bonds, cryptos, metals, land, certain oil stocks like Zion Oil and Gas, for example, which is continuing to move up, by the way. We believe this summer they might discover oil. That's what we're going to be watching closely. And we'll, of course, bring that to you as we know more information. I just bring them up as a point of a mechanism for the wealth transfer. We have about a 5-year window where we can take advantage of this and bless God's people and exponentially do kingdom work for the harvest of souls. And at the end of that 5-year period, you want to be out of this while they continue to try to push the beast system, so you become your own private Western central bank. It's really clear that you hear that and not take it as us condoning the new digital system. That's not what we're saying. So I just want to be clear about that. Okay, so on some other news moving forward, I want to show you a couple of more slides here. This is significant. Just bear with me a second, folks. So this is from Ben Darushka on X, the global RV. What are we waiting for? Well, there's several key factors. And so one of them is the trade agreements. President Trump is doing that right now. You can see it. He's got probably behind the scenes 200 trade agreements. We know Vietnam's going to be up in the rear here pretty soon. He has an end date, and I'll show you a video on that in a second, of July 9th. What we think is going to happen is President Trump on July 4th, in front of the military, in front of a national, probably global audience, will announce these aforementioned items, that he's done all the trade deals, the stable coin, which the Genius Act, which is just enacted recently, that ties to many other things we'll talk about in a minute. He's going to probably talk about a gold-backed digital coin tied to the new US note. He might not say that, but he'll allude to it in a very creative, sort of elusive way, like a double com. Basel III endgame on July 1st. Everything must take effect for Basel III. And if you'll recall, Basel III for the newbies, Basel III is, in very simple terms, just means that all major banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, et cetera, all of them have to show on their balance sheets that they have physical gold and silver in their vaults that they can use to exchange for monies. If you get a paycheck and you want to get a percentage of it in silver and gold, they have to honor that. If they can't do that, they're out of business. That's the long and the short of it. And then he's also going to talk about a gold standard monetary policy. They're already starting to talk about that, where gold is revalued to its true rate, which will peg to the bonds, the cryptos, currencies, etc. So these are the things that we're looking for. Also, we'll tie it right in, since we're talking about XRP. We expect a decision soon, and that decision will be tied to all these other aforementioned items. We also believe that he's going to cleverly word in that cryptos are now freed up and part of the new system, which would, of course, include XRP. These are the things that we are looking to see. Now I'm going to show you a couple of other slides here. Here's another slide that illustrates that from Zero Hedge, a very respected source. Trump's monetary reset. We just talked about it. Is a gold-backed dollar on the horizon? Yes. And this is another sort of a clue or a com to what's coming. Let me see what else I can show you here. Just bear with me a moment, folks. Okay, back to XRP for a minute. This is other significant news. According to Aramco, as of yesterday, Saudi Arabian oil company, we just talked about Zion Oil and Gas in the Middle East. Well, part of Israel, but still one and the same. Saudi Arabian oil company tokenizing oil on the XRP ledger. So everything's being brought into the blockchain front and center. It's all merging, folks. The precious metals are the bedrock that tie into everything else that we're watching. So it's not separate, it's conjoined, as we've said many times before. Now I'm going to stop this real quick, and I'm going to show you a final video here of President Trump talking about a date. Now, we don't do dates and rates here, but what this is a timeline for these sequence of events. So you want to be watching for that closely. Let's cue that up here. And just give me a moment, folks. Thank you for being patient. And I will cue up the sound so you can actually hear it. And then I'm going to play this brief clip where he talks about a couple things, and pay attention to the things he's discussing, because it ties in what we're talking about. And then, of course, the aforementioned date. Okay, here we go.
I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till June 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, We'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th.
Okay, you caught him saying that. If you look at this Q post here, dated July 9th, 2019, a 6-year delta over the next 6 years. You also heard him a little bit of a flub. We don't know if that was intentional or not, where he said he was starting to say June and said July. June is a pretty big month for what we're looking for in the second half of the year for a lot of these things to take shape, as you've heard us discuss on some previous podcasts with many of our illustrious guests. And then finally, to cover the commodities, since we talked about gold, as of the time of this broadcast, crude oil is trading at $60.68, which is interesting. It's starting to come back down to that $60 mark. X22 had Bob Kudla on this week, and he even said of his own admission that he didn't think that oil was going to get any higher than $55. So even he's acknowledging on his end that that's where it's going. It's going to continue to go down and down and down because as we continue to drill and bring energy down here and pull of our oil reserves, including Alaska, we won't have the need for dependency on foreign oil. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on Iraq and Iran, so forth, from both the US and Saudi Arabia, because again, they all have memorandums of understanding with Vietnam and Iraq, because they, believe me, they have currency there and they want to cash out just as much as we do. So it's squeezing a squeeze blade to the middle. Gold is at currently $3,277.90. Silver is still holding steady at $33.09. Really good time to buy silver, by the way, folks, because you have to consider it's not just a pricing issue, it's delivery. It doesn't matter if you can afford it if you can't get it. And then the dollar index is at $99.51, so it's still below 100. At one point, the Dixie was as low, I think, late last week at $98.75. So that concludes this week's weekly RV report. As breaking news develops, we will bring it to you as soon as possible, post haste. Thank you for watching, listening, for your patience, and thank you for your trust and support. God bless. Take care. Goodbye for now.